Hail, Kingdom, Path of Exile 2. You know the drill. I wanted to make the perfect mercenary who could wield a crossbow, but crossbows, man. Spoiler alert, it was so slow that I aged 20 years while waiting for the second shot. So I decided to step away from slow weapons and start to think, what if I just break the game with pure unrestrained power? And just like that, I had a build that could clear maps faster than the game can load next area, and can do it basically from the start without investing loads of precious divines and exiles. So today, kings and queens, you can watch me, Spot the King, as I turn this mercenary into one-button wrecking ball, all while ignoring the fact that this setup should probably be illegal. You can start playing this build from level 40 or so we need a way to level up. Leveling with a crossbow feels like eating a soup with a fork. It technically works, but why would you? Crossbows are slow, clunky and terrible, at least in my opinion, but only unless you exploit every mechanic to make them slightly less so. So if you wish to play mercenary with a crossbow, that's how you can level him up. We can use fragmentation around skill. It's piercing bolts, so now we will have ability to deal with packs of enemies at least. To make it more useful, make sure you have support gem, double barrel, that will give you additional bolt when you're reloading, as well as scatter shot. This will make this ability into AoE clear ability basically. But while we have a way to deal with packs of enemies, we need a way to deal with bosses also, or with slightly beefier enemies. Gas grenade comes to in use. It's slightly higher level ability, but you will unlock it right when you need it. It's bouncing grenade that will burst in a poison gas cloud. To make it more useful against bosses and basic enemies, we want to use corrosion supportive gem to break enemy armor, and when armor fully breaks, we will use armor explosion that will explode all enemies when armor fully broken. Pretty nice and basic combination for start of the game, and then we switch into explosive shot. It's flaming bolts that will explode on impact. Combine it with concentrated effect to deal more area damage, since we don't care about area of effect, and double barrel. We get new and insanely powerful pack clearing skill. And to make it even more powerful to clear screens, we use explosive grenade. This grenade takes a lot of time to actually blast an enemies, but you can blast it with explosive shot. So yeah, just drop explosive grenade, use explosive shot, bam, everyone's gone. Combine it with magnified effect to increase area of effect, and scatter shot to shoot 3 grenades at the same time, and you got screen clearing machine basically. Turns out the best mercenary build starts when you stop caring about being mercenary. Yeah, the best way to level up, at least in my experience, is to forget crossbow and use bow instead. You can watch my full leveling guide on fast leveling in Path of Exile 2. It will be in the description, so you can easily find it and level up your character insanely fast. But basic idea is to use bows and combining lightning rod with lightning shot to clear packs, poison arrow with corrosion to deal with bosses, and right gear combination to clear the whole game insanely fast by using almost like insanely cheap items. And you can do it like in few hours or so. No matter what path you choose to level up your mercenary, you will play with the same passive skill tree, and that's what I found to be most effective one. Idea is simple. What's the point of defense if everything dead before it touches you? Answer: none, of course. So everything you need to have before you reach level 40 is to just have every projectile damage node you can possibly get in the right part of mercenary skill tree, and then every time you take 2 steps into any direction, you will have more projectile damage, with insane additional stun build-up and extra projectile damage. And also don't ignore attack speed on the left. This attack speed will increase your clearing speed a lot, especially if you're using bow. And finish with extra damage and projectile damage on the right side. You don't need to go into a long road, and this passive skill tree is more than enough to clear whole game until cruel difficulty. And now the main part which makes this build work. Crossbows and bows didn't work out, so I said screw it and picked up a stick that somehow does 100 times more damage. The Pillars of the Caged God is less a weapon and more a declaration of intent. I will break this game. Turn a stick into a weapon of mass destruction. Well, you can. This weapon description might as well say break the game into 2 steps. Stack stats, profit. The coolest part, it's insanely cheap. You can get it basically for 1 exalt, but it's also very common unique drop. And that's why I decided to return to Mercenary after playing my monk. I basically got like 5 copies of the stick and even managed to make 3 slots in one of them. Stick is insanely basic. It's level 1 stick, but you get in 2% increased area of effect per 5 intelligence. 100 intelligence means you will have 40% increased area of effect, 2% increased attack speed for 5 dexterity, 100 dexterity, 40% more attack speed, and 10% increased weapon damage per 5 strength. 100 strength means you will have 200% increased weapon damage, but weapon damage is of course pretty laughable. With full quality it will have just around from 10 to 20 damage, so that's not a big deal to have insane amount of strength. Still, in the beginning that's the biggest damaging factor for us, and in the end turns out if you stack enough stats, even a stick becomes a god-slaying weapon. Path of Exile logic at its finest. Still, we get one problem. We need to somehow survive against really strong monsters, while we don't have the best gear in the game yet. And here is the answer. The helmet. The helmet that will completely change how we play and how build plays out. This helmet names is 3 Dragons Solid Mask. But let's be honest, it's more like Dragon's Unfair Advantage. Let me explain. You will get bonus to all elemental resistances, as well as more evasion and energy shield, which is good for survival at least a little bit, but it will completely change how elemental alignments will interact. Fire damage will contribute to shock chance, cold damage to ignite chance, and lightning to freeze build up. And now it's time for me to show you the complete build, or I better say initial setup. This setup combines freezing, shocking and stunning enemies at the same time, or as I call it, the triple treat of game breaking. Basically it's supposed to be balanced, but then I added secret gems and broke everything. Shock, freeze, stun. It's not a fight, it's an execution, guys. And most of the time when you got the Pillars of the Caged God, which scales with stats, you think like this: I added all the stats, problem solved. Not exactly. If you got best gear in the game, then probably yes, but I'm showing you the build that can be played basically from the get-go, and you don't need more than 2 exalts to start playing it. Yeah, that's everything we need to start. First of all, gear. That's the gloves I was using. What you're looking on gloves and basically on all parts of your gear is strength and dexterity at this point. Strength adding damage to your weapon attack and scales attack a lot, while dexterity giving you attack speed, so it also scales your damage per second. One more really important stat that you're looking on your gear is lightning damage to attacks. That's what you can find on the gloves, and that's basically the gloves I got. You don't care about armor, energy shield and other stats, you care about this damage output. Best defense is offense, right? If possible, make sure to get your resistances high with your gear, but again, it's not very important. Most important stuff is stat stacking, strength and dexterity at this point of the game. Another pieces of gear where you can find your lightning damage to attacks is your rings actually. So I got nice rings with strength, and some of them was with intelligence, but most importantly with nice lightning damage to attacks. For amulet, again, you're looking for attributes for your strength and dexterity, but spoiler alert, in the late game and later in the game you want to have more intelligence, so it's also okay if you got some intelligence in your gear, and you don't want extremely low intelligence either. You want to keep it right below your dexterity, just a little bit. To keep your flasks up, I like to use white belt, so belt with nice resistances is what you're looking for, and again you can have some stats on it. And boots, you're looking for boots with nice movement speed bonus as well as strength and dexterity as always, with some resistances. For armor, I was using this body armor with nice armor and energy shield, but most importantly again with more strength. So basically some resistances. Just make sure you're not dying to first hit of fireball from enemies. To make everything work at this point of the game, you need a right skill tree, and that's our pretty awkward passive skill tree. You can find it in my written guide, basically, like a little bit written guide. I mostly explaining builds in videos, but you can get at least this passive skill tree and other stuff on the website. So that's what you're looking for: half circle, counterclockwise, while picking all the important nodes on the way. And the first node we are looking for will be located over here. It's called Resonance, and basically you will gain power charges instead of frenzy charges. So this will help for our build. And when you get to this node, you basically can start playing Pillars of the Cage God. Then get back to the beginning and start getting all important stuff from the bottom, basically counterclockwise to the top. You want to get almost all nodes on this star to increase your attributes a lot, as well as getting more damage based on your lowest attribute. We will get this part with electrocution, some critical strikes and damage, and also with attack speed and dexterity stacking, more lightning damage and quarterstaff damage, as well as damage to frozen enemies, and we will use our mana as health a little bit with these parts. Technically that's almost finished passive skill tree, so basically get it while you're leveling up, and you will get it around level 80 or so. But to tie everything up, we need correct skills, and you will finally understand how this build is working. So first one is Storm Wave, our most important skill. Converts all physical damage to lightning damage. When you see this skill in action, what do you think? Storm Wave is technically a ranged area of effect attack, right? Unless you find out that game thinks it's melee attack. Brilliant.
I fucking knew it. No, you didn't fucking know it. I just told you.
This means you can use Rage, supportive gem on it, and with every attack you will have more and more and more damage. That's pretty crazy, right? Kinda, yeah, and you can definitely use it, especially in the beginning, but later I suggest you to get a ruby with at least +1 more rage on melee attacks. That's basically everything you need, 1 ruby or even 2 rubies in your passive skill tree. There's a lot of gems, gem slots, and you will have this maximum rage most of the time. So, main supportive gems for our Storm Wave. First one will be Upheaval, but it mostly like late game-ish stuff. Actually, before I beat it campaign, I used no Upheaval. Still, in the late game, it's our main screen clearing gem. It will create 2 additional fissures, and basically you will have 3 really large lightning pillars on the screen that basically destroys everyone. But again, as I told you, it's not very important, especially when you're just leveling up from level 40 to just like level 60, 70 when you just start mapping. Most important stuff in campaign, and you can clear campaign without this AoE clear, is lightning infusion. It will give you more lightning damage to your attacks. And our main source of damage is lightning damage, so that's like a really important supportive gem. Then I like to use long shot. It will deal more damage to enemies who is further away. 35% more damage is pretty insane, and you clear most enemies before they even reach you. More is a magic word in World of Path of Exile, because more is multiplicative addition. When you see something that increases your damage, it will just flatly increase initial number, but more applied after all calculations. So primal ornament that will inflict more weapon elemental damage is the way to scale our damage even further. And then of course one of my favorite is Martial Temper to increase our attack speed and therefore increase damage per second insanely insane. But I promise you that we will triple stun our enemies most of the time, and that's how you can do it. Basically, what you want to actually use as your first gem, at least while you're beating campaign, but also you can use it on maps and against pinnacle bosses, is Electrocute. Supported skills cannot inflict shock, but the skill cannot inflict shock already with our helmet, since lightning damage contributes to freeze build-up instead of shock build-up. But right now, lightning damage also will contribute to electrocution build-up. This makes enemies basically double stunned all the time. You will freeze them and they will be frozen for like few seconds, but then when they unfrozen they will be instantly electrocuted for 5 more seconds. When they out of electrocution, they sometime will be frozen again and then electrocuted again, and in the end they also will be stunned. So it's perma-stun build, which basically destroys everyone in the campaign and all bosses on the maps without any skill necessary. You just press and hold your button and make sure you're not running out of mana. That's the secret gem, and that's how the whole build tied up and works. Now let's talk about how we can deal with bosses more effectively, especially with pinnacle bosses, because I got a little bit of problems when I tried to finish my ascendancy, last ascendancy points of course, because I wasn't able to finally freeze and electrocute these bosses in Shirimas and also in Trials of Chaos. But here is the solution. Hand of Chayula. Yeah, Hand of Chayula is pretty magic stuff. Basically it's melee attack, you're doing this attack and you're applying curses and marks that is inside. Inside you want to have conductivity to reduce lightning resistance of enemy, therefore doing more damage, heightened curse to increase power of this curse, and last but not least freezing mark. Freezing mark will increase freeze build-up on enemies, and therefore you will be able to freeze enemies a lot easier and faster. But that's not it. Of course, we won't have enough damage, especially when you just level 40 and you got only stats and no extra bonus damage nodes. So we need extra power, and as I told you, you need resonance to get power charges. Power charges will be used to activate charged stuff. How it works? It basically consumes all power charges and infuses your stuff with electricity. You will be able to charge your power stuff pretty easily by just freezing and electrocuting enemies every now and then. This will add extra lightning damage to your attack, and as I told you in gear section, that's one of the most important parts for our build, and it basically adds extra layer of attack on our build. You want persistence in it to increase effect duration, so you're not running out of this buff a lot, but to get these power charges you need combat frenzy active. You will gain frenzy charges when you freeze, electrocute or pin an enemy, and you of course changing these frenzy charges into power charges thanks to our passive skill tree, and also you want Profusion support gem inside of frenzy to grant you additional charge sometime. But that's not it, we got really nice and special and funny interaction here. Since all our damage is altered by our helmet, we need to have fire infusion inside. So instead of having like insane amount of damage with this skill, we will deal less lightning damage but a lot more fire extra damage. This will give us ability to shock enemies and deal more damage to shocked enemies. Therefore, we need conduction to have more chances to shock our enemies with this skill. If you think that you get nice chance to shock already, you can use lightning exposure, for example. When you shock enemies, you will basically deal a lot more damage, even when they just basically shocked. But if you don't like this fire infusion stuff and don't like this interaction, you can just go with any damaging lightning nodes or lightning support gems and you will be fine. Last but not least is our skills to defeat hard bosses. So Tempest Flurry is the way to go, basically quick attacks in melee range, and it doesn't matter what you actually use on this skill, it will have nice damage no matter what. I got +1 level to supported lightning skills, and supportive skills have less cost, with inspiration of course. Also in the late game I'm dropping rage on this skill, since I don't need rage on my main shocking wave, and that's it basically. And of course we need a Tempest Bell. It will be activated when you got enough combo, in basically you're attacking with Tempest Flurry, it will generate combination, you can blast your Tempest Bell and it will add extra damage on top of your basic damage output. You want to use Font of Rage to generate rage around the bell, overburdens, so you never run out of the bells and you can spam them basically without interruptions, and close combo to deal more damage in melee range. Also it can be used on Tempest Flurry of course. Now let's talk about buffs. So for buffs, actually you don't need any, like a lot, but what I like to use Blink. Blink is very nice, it helps you to get away from different and difficult situations. You see someone wants to blow up, basically blink away. It helps a lot with this unacceptable amount of on-dash effects on enemies in Path of Exile 2. Honestly, I don't know what is the best support gems for Blink, but I use Ingenuity to reduce cooldown recovery rate and Mobility to have less movement speed penalty while using this skill. I don't know if there's any like movement speed penalty, but definitely I don't want it. Another really important support gem is Grim Fist, and Grim Fist is insanely important to have extra layer of protection from enemies. Enemies who died recently will have this white spirit, and you will collect these spirits to gain more energy shield. Also, I like to use Clarity to increase mana regeneration on any of the buffs that is available to me right now. With this setup you will find yourself a lot in situations when you enter the map, blink, and suddenly everything dead. Yeah, but the bosses will take slightly more effort. There is one simple trick that you can make to deal with these bosses more easily. Since bosses most of the time is actually a boss, or I can better phrase it, a single person, you don't need the full screen clear. What you need is concentrated effect. So switch from triple pillars into concentrated effect. Now you will have less area of effect but more area damage. 40% more area damage to be more precise. I found myself in situations where I even don't need Tempest Flurry and a bell, and I can deal with bosses just like that. Switching to one massive attack for bosses is like bringing a nuke to a knife fight. Excessive but fun. Still, strategy for maps: run, kill, repeat. For bosses, hit harder and hope for the best, because bosses sometimes are really a bit too tough. But that's only until you get your final uniques. These upgrades will take your build from strong to completely broken. Delightful. And all we need is to just get to items. If you want to buy them from market, they will cost a little bit, but the build already clearing maps so fast, so you can easily get these Exiles or Divines you need. The cheapest and first upgrade you can make is to change your body armor and get Morior Invictus Grand Regalia. There's a lot of different versions of this armor, but I found that getting more attributes per socketed rune and increasing maximum mana was really cheap on the market, so I got it for even less than one divine. Morior Invictus made my stats skyrocket, so naturally I immediately pushed it too far, and it was a lot easier to clear at this point. But the next item will take the build to the next level: Hands of Wisdom and Action. More like Hands of Break Everything in Sight. Perfect synergy of intelligence, dexterity and destruction. You can get this drop from level 4 Pinacle boss in Breach, but these gloves instantly triples our damage. You can get like cheap versions of these gloves for few divines probably, and they definitely worse. They will also start stacks. You will have more attack speed per 25 dexterity, you will have up to 10 lightning damage added to your attacks per 10 intelligence, and when you get these gloves you want to completely change your stats. Instead of focusing on strength as your main stat, you want to lower your strength below your dexterity, get your intelligence as high as possible, followed by dexterity and strength. This insane intelligence will make area of effect of your attacks insanely insane. You will basically cover whole screen with lightnings, and the damage will be basically broken. These upgrades are so good, I expected them to be nerfed in this patch, but they didn't, so you can completely freely play this stuff. And while it's technically it, I got two setups that I will quickly explain to you because they can be useful for your situation, depending on your gear. First one will be to get Mind over Matter. You need to sacrifice a lot of critical damage nodes to get over here, but all damage will be taken from mana before your health. If you wish, you can combine it with Eldritch Battery to completely remove your energy shield, but I only suggest to do it if you got Everlasting Gaze Azure Amulet. It will convert a little bit of your mana to energy shield, so you will have a little bit of buffer, and every time you're being hit by a monster you won't instantly get out of mana completely. And turning mana into health is genius. You will have like 10k effective HP. It's basically like cheating, except it's in the rulebook. But this setup got one problem. It will make you unstoppable unless the ground is lava. Then you're toast. Yeah, basically every time we stand on the burning ground, we lose a lot of mana instantly and we won't be able to use our spells. So I run into few instances against the bosses where I just don't have enough mana to attack. Use it at your own risk, but it's definitely a fun setup to use and very safe. You just don't even need to think on the maps most of the time, you will never be beaten. The last setup is what I'm using right now. Basically, as I showed you in passive skill tree, I switched into this node over here to give me ability to use a little bit of my mana as protective barrier. Also, I have a little bit of energy shield, so we don't have like 10k effective health, but I'm using a little bit of mana as health, a little bit of energy shield with added energy shield, and that's more than enough to clear hardest maps possible. So tier 16 maps with all the difficulties and stuff, we can easily clear it, and we can easily clear the bosses over there. And I even removed my resonance node, so I'm not using shocking weapon no more. I'm not using melee attacks, I'm not using bell. I'm basically holding one button and clearing wall screens. But when I need to fight versus Pinacle boss, I just switch into my Monk. Monk completely destroys and melts bosses. You can see the build for this Monk here in the screen right now, and see you in the next videos.